All right, Stephen William Hanna coming to me from Scotland. How you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Good to meet you again, Frank. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So we were kind of talking off the record about the golden age of self-publishing, and you were in the middle of a lecture, I'll call it. So feel free, man. Please continue on. That's it.
So I guess curatorship is the important thing, right? I should probably pronounce my T's. Curatorship is the important thing, right? So there's no, like you were saying, there's no gatekeeper really in self-publishing. Anyone can self-publish. You're urinating into an ocean that's already been urinated in a lot. There's a lot of
I love
of
the
bad
analogy.
self-published stuff.
I love it.
Yeah, I'll keep it PG. It's really hard to stand out. So you get people emerge on social media. I guess it's the same influencer cycle that every social media platform's going through just now, where curatorship's the thing that people are flocking to. Maybe people want to read great self-published books, but where are you going to find them? Trawling through Amazon, the algorithm's not going to be kind to them. And most self-published writers don't have that many reviews either, so they don't stand out. So yeah, it's really hard to stand out, but you're standing out from amongst such a massive, massive crowd. Yeah, curatorship's the problem, I think. But I think we're coming into, like you said, like a golden age of self-publishing where, man, there's some really, really phenomenal self-published stuff out there just now. And it's only getting better as far as I can see.
Oh yeah, for sure. And whenever we were talking off the record for my listeners to kind of, to catch everyone up, last week's guest, Joe Lansdale, who was completely awesome. I had B.L. Blankenship and Chuck Buda on, and Joe made a great insight. And he said that the advent of self-publishing, you're kind of seeing less and less of the traditional gatekeepers.
Yeah.
And my response to that was there's still some gatekeeping, but it's the readers who are the gatekeepers now. And what we're seeing is the books that are edited very well, the books that are hitting all the strong points, dialogue, atmosphere, plot, structure, they're able to, use the traditional literary devices that have proven themselves time and time again over 200 years the most effective. And those are the writers on Amazon and across all the other self-published platforms that are rising to the top. And I would like for all of my viewers to check out Stephen William Hanna's book, the Interloper series. I'm on book 1, Icebreakers. And guys, I had a little thing that I was going to read, but I'm just going to kind of speak from the heart. Holy shit, this is a damn good book. I've been up, most of the night reading it, not reading at work. If my bosses are watching, I promise I am working on my cases. But my lunch breaks, my breaks, anywhere I can sneak in and steal a moment. And I have to say, of the books this year, the guests that I've had on Reader's Labyrinth, everyone is awesome. They've been able to bring it to that level. But I would really like to give Steve a shout out right here. And I'm going to have a link in the show notes to the Interloper series. And I want my viewers to go and buy this book because, as he said, we are in the golden age of self-published authors. And you guys are looking at, the quality is just so, it is there. This guy in front of me is bringing it. And I'm going to be telling my friends and family about his book. And I'm also going to have him on again whenever I finish the series. So that is my plug for Stephen. I like to save my authors from plugging their own stuff. Guys, oh my gosh, you've got to jump in it.
That's very good. Thank you. I think just let you keep going now.
Yeah, man. And you know what? Whenever we were on Twitter, I was kind of thinking about your book, and I was like, this is like a blend of a post-apocalyptic sci-fi. There's some horror elements in it. It's like Damnation Alley, meets the writing of Ambrose Bierce. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but I was like, damn, this guy is hitting it. It is wonderful.
So I have no idea who either of those things are. So now I've got 2 books to go check out. I want to know what it is that's similar about it. But I'm assuming that's a massive compliment to similar good writers.
Oh man, they are massively, massively good. Like they are really, really, really cool. And the best way I can describe Ambrose Bierce is he's kind of a forerunner to H.P. Lovecraft is what he is. And yeah, and he's very much a writer in like the liminal lands. There's some paranormal stuff, but we don't quite know what it is. And his characters can kind of shift into other dimensions. And he was writing after the American Civil War. So he was writing in like the 1870s, 1880s, and 90s. And he eventually disappeared into Mexico. Like, no one knows what happened to him around like 1890 something, I think. And so there's this, oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah. Which that's what you need to do when you're finished writing. When you can no longer write, you need to disappear and build up a mythos around you, Steve.
Perfect.
Well, so where did you get the idea for Interloper? Like, where did this come from? I'm seeing all these different kind of elements in it, but you said that you have never seen Damnation Alley, so that kind of throws my first theory out of the water. Where did it come from?
So I was browsing, I believe it was Reddit, it might have been Instagram, no, I think it was Reddit, and I play a lot of Dungeons & Dragons, I play a lot of tabletop RPGs, I love that stuff. I've DM'd for a long time, so I'm always looking for ideas. I was looking for cool winter campaign ideas, and I saw a thing on Reddit, and it was a picture of it's the picture at the top of my Twitter banner. It's the picture of this big land ship in this frozen wilderness, quite industrial. It looks like a submarine on wheels or something. And I remember seeing that, and people in the thread were discussing it would be cool to imagine in some horrible post-apocalypse world where like the world's all frozen over, this is what you have to get in. Like, this is what the postman drives. This is what the people who deliver your mail drive, because the world is so dangerous out there. And people were making up little paragraphs of stories about it, and that's where the initial seed of the whole setting came from. Then it went through a lot of permutations before we got to what we ended up with. But like almost all of my ideas, it started off as a Dungeons & Dragons thing, which they all tend to. That is so
cool. This, this is how I want all of my favorite authors' ideas to come from. As a D&D master, it's like you're creating these elaborate worlds. I love it so much. That is so thrilling to think about. And like, what I love about the crawler in this book I'm reading is that a good post-apocalyptic, writing, it kind of has a safe space that is also a fort, and. It just kind of brings this, there's safety here, but there's psychological pressure. There's danger on the outside. And I mean, it just kind of has like a real primal feel to it. And, I definitely don't want any spoilers yet because the book is so damn good. But, so the idea started on Reddit, and you were trying to come up with, I suppose with the D&T, a world building. Where did the characters come from? Was this something
that's a really interesting one, actually, yeah. I'm not entirely sure where the characters come from. I don't know where characters live, but there's a bunch of them in my head at any one time, and I kind of draw on them. The characters are all quite archetypal in Icebreaker. I wanted to really round out, again, it goes back to the tabletop stuff. I wanted a D&D party, and so you need a healer, a warrior, a mage, and a rogue, right? Like a priest or whatever. And all the characters slip into those archetypes. You get Glass as the big, walking mountain of a man. He's the big warrior. Dusty knows about all the old world and everything. He's a magician. He's got arcane technologies and stuff. Bear's a scientist. He's a healer. And then B is like the sneaky rogue lady. She's a hunter. She's a stalker, a trapper and stuff. And so they started as archetypal characters. And then I tried to layer on just the mountains of conflict that you want a good cast to have. You want to give them loads of problems and things to deal with, and that's what. Then I started tying all those threads together, so the characters all grew as one thing. But Bear was the first. Bear got a couple of chapters in before I realised that he needed lots of people to bounce off of.
One thing I can really appreciate your writing is every single scene has a point. It's either to kind of give us some, there's a lot of writing out there, and it's almost like, the writer is just trying to hit a word count, or there'll be a scene and I'm thinking, okay, this was, kind of interesting in an abstract way, but it didn't really serve to kind of, to advance the storyline. And I mean, I say this as a reader, someone who's, not a writer, so I'm not trying to hate on anyone, but what I really like that you're able to do with the characters is there's a lot of showing and very little telling. And to me, I mean, that is the mark of a superb writer, because there's lots of stuff out there where they are telling. The traditional publishing houses, they are telling us stories. They're not showing us stories.
Yeah. Show don't tell is one of those things that gets people fixate on it, and there's nothing wrong with a little bit of telling. Sometimes there are things that work, especially in like a first person narrative, and obviously Icebreaker's a weird one in that it's third person present tense, but I chose that tense and person perspective, whatever you want to call it. I chose that so that information was limited, so you only ever really know what Bear knows, and Bear knows a lot, but this is completely new to him. He's got no grounds to understand any of this, and neither does the reader. And so you only pick up on what Bear picks up on, and you only hear what he hears and experience what he experiences broadly, so that it keeps the reader in the dark a little bit more. Adds to that, I guess, the tension or the fear of the unknown that the whole experience is about.
Oh yeah, and so I was going to ask you about that because you know one of the questions I had was the third person present, I guess is the point of view on it, and you know for the viewers out there, this just adds a whole other layer of like malevolence to whatever is outside the walls, whatever is outside the armored crawler, and like it's. It's almost like, an old myth or an epic or something like that. And whenever you were talking about the archetypal characters, what's your reasons for thinking that, they are so powerful? I mean, they're present in literature around the world, your healer, your warrior, your rogue leader. Do you think it's something that's innate to humans or what?
I think probably. I don't want to get into whether or not do I think animals have like archetypes and stuff, but I think like if you look back at human history, like myth retell, everyone knows about Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey and everything. There's a common structure and commonalities between the symbols and myth. The story, I mean, you could go on about Carl Jung all day and the archetypes of the personality. That maybe just talks more to my influences. But yeah, I think when people see the wise old man in the story, they know who he is, they know what he represents, and you can use those archetypes wisely. You can completely upend them if you like. A lot of people like to go against the grain and have people be completely different from what you might expect, and that's surprising and refreshing, and I like that as well. But I think you can use any kind of powerful symbol like that, any kind of archetypal human symbol, as language in your book that doesn't need to be spoken out loud. Like if you introduce a character like Dusty, just from a brief description of him, you know that he's a wise old man. That's an archetypal character. And then that gives you a solid frame to build off of when you embellish them a little bit. But everyone knows who that is without you having to be told. Everyone knows who Gandalf is. Everyone knows who Dumbledore is. It's that way for a reason, I think. So, and it's not just characters. You can use it in anything. Like things like the wolf is a symbol of a predator or something. Or, everyone's got different symbols. But you can use any of them, really. I think archetypes are just the character version.
Dusty adds like this whole other layer of depth to your story. Like, whenever I was, the scenes that have him, I always kind of picture this industrial Gandalf, with like this, this Victorian architecture behind him. And yeah.
I
love it.
Who's the Sam Elliott? He's Sam Elliott in
That's
my
right.
head.
Yeah. Okay.
From the Big Lebowski.
Okay. All right.
Sam Elliott with like a big mullet.
Sam Elliott. Yeah. I love it. And so your descriptors in the novel, like, what I like about it is that I'm able to kind of visualize the crawler. I'm able to visualize the command center in it and the snow outside. And I get a sense of the danger without your descriptors being too wordy. Was that intentional, or is that just kind of, okay, I see you shaking your head yes on that one?
Yeah, that was completely intentional. That's when I read a lot of self-published books in my day-to-day life, and it's one of my pet peeves is when people take 10 hours to describe the measurements and the furniture and everything. I'm like, I don't need this. All I need is a vibe. Give me the vibe, and I'll populate the rest of it. It's what we were just talking about, right? There's symbols in someone's head. If I say bedroom, you'll picture a bedroom, stock standard bedroom. If I say it's a fantasy bedroom, or if it's like an industrial bit, like it's one of the bedrooms on a submarine, you get a different thing in your head, and it's best not to mess with that too much. Like just let the people have their visualization. If it's not important, if it's not like very important that the characters or the layout of the room is going to come into play in the scene somehow or something, then just leave it. It's just dead air. No one cares about people. Just skip it anyway. And then just fill it in with their own imaginings anyway. So you may as well not give them it in the first place. And it makes for a much faster paced story. And also people tend to fill in the details. It's like the horror thing, right? In a horror movie, you don't show the monster; it's always worse in your head. What the reader imagines is always going to be worse. So like, you don't want to paint in too fine a brush. You don't want to go too much into detail where especially in horror, you want to leave some things. Just leave it as whatever comes into the reader's head. It's probably worse than anything you could come up with anyway.
Oh yeah, for sure. And whenever I'm thinking about your descriptors in the novel, you were using the term, or you were using to describe the crawler as a submarine. I guess to kind of use the cramped quarters and stuff. And that immediately got my mind kind of twirling a little bit, because I was thinking to myself, hey, a submarine, it's a cramped place, it's a sealed compartment, and there's some environmental stuff too, because the pre-cataclysmic world, there was some kind of ecological disaster, some kind of natural disaster. Is there anything deeper, no pun intended, in using a submarine? Like, have you ever?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That was a very deliberate choice, and I won't say any more than that. You'll find out eventually. But
yes, I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah, you got that one bang on the head, yeah.
Oh man. I just want to stay home from work all day and just read this story now. I mean, it is killing me, Stephen. It's so good.
Thank you so much. That's really lovely to hear. That's the best thing you can hear as a writer, is that someone like loses sleep over something that you've written, or is like putting off doing the housework so they can keep reading it.
Well, I can tell you this: you are definitely going to get a 3-star review from me, sir. I'm joking, a 5-star. You're definitely going to get a 3-star. I mean, I have to make it look legit, right?
Yeah, That's right. It look legit.
You have to make it look legit to give it 3 stars.
A friend of mine done that for my first ever published book. This was when I was 8. That was like 12, 13 years ago. I published my first book, and one of my friends reviewed it 1 star to make it look realistic, and no one else reviewed it.
Here you go, bro.
Just 1 star.
I did you a favor, man. 1 star.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.
Thank you. That's right. Oh man, I love that. Gosh, yeah. But yeah, the novel. I mean. This is why, I started my YouTube channel. I wanted to find novels like yours, like a B.O. Blankenship, L.B. Stinson, Megan, Chuck Buda, Soren Narnia, and just kind of like bring these books into the space of YouTube, into the space of other areas, because, as I said, I think, we're in a golden age of books, because 40 years ago, there's so many self-published books that are bestsellers, and they wouldn't have found a market 40 years ago. I mean, there's no way they would have made it in, but we're starting to see it now. So yeah, definitely keep on writing. What other projects are you working on? I noticed that you have the 3 books out, and I went on your Amazon page, and what else do you have for us, or maybe coming out?
So
that you're comfortable sharing.
Oh, always comfortable. I'm really just waiting on the cover art for my next novel, which is called The First Rule. It's a fantasy noir kind of story.
Sweet.
Missing
I'm
girls,
liking it. Okay.
Missing children, a big old undead choir, and if you hear the song, it gets into your head like the Pied Piper, and you go and join the choir. And it's like a little hamlet in the middle of nowhere fantasy story. But it's, if you liked Icebreaker, you'll like this. It's a lot of the same. That's what I write. This one is set in the D&D world that I run all of my games in, so I thought it was about time that I used that for something. I've had that for like 10, 13 years or something. I thought maybe time to put that to use. So it's different genre than I usually write, but I'd written fantasy previously. And once I get the cover art for it, I'll be releasing that. It should be out before the end of the year. Anyone who follows me on Twitter will see me screaming and hollering about it for the entire time that it comes out. Like, once it's ready to release, I've been ready to go for like 4 or 5 months. I'm just waiting on the cover, and then it's good to go.
Well, so what do you look for whenever you're choosing some cover art for your books? Is there anything that any kind of aspiring writers out there should be looking for?
Oh, that's a good point. Simplicity, I would say. You want it to be eye-catching, though. If you're scrolling past, like if I flick down on my Twitter feed, I'll see 15 book covers. I might stop and look at an interesting one. I might pass by most of them, because a lot of book covers are quite formulaic, especially if you're not going to hire an artist. I'm lucky enough that I've got an artist who is very affordable. Not everyone can afford a good cover artist. And then you can try and do it yourself. And I would say if you don't have any kind of skill in graphic design, you're going to make classic mistakes that anyone can see. And people will judge your book by its cover all the time. So you want your cover to
100%,
be really,
yeah.
really... Oh, yeah, definitely. Especially if you're self-published, people already have expectations, right? Self-published, they go, it's self-published, and it's got a stock cover. It's, like 99 of the other books like this that I've read haven't been very good. I wonder if this one will be. And maybe it is, but they'll never find out because your cover wasn't very good. So yeah, focus a lot of resources if you can on getting the cover perfect. And try and make something eye-catching.
I think both of us do. I would love to work full-time and just reviewing authors all day. I mean, I could just kind of live in a fiction world and just kind of, think about the deeper aspects, kind of go on. I would get a blast out of that.
It would be a dream to just. I mean, I don't live a very different life to that. I just spend most of my day reading. I work very early in the morning and very late at night. So in the middle of the day, when there's nobody around to do anything, I get to just sit by my window. I've got a really beautiful view out my window of Glasgow, and I just sit there and read and write and really mess about on social media a lot. After I've done the housework and everything, obviously, but it's a pretty decent life, man. It's just reading books all day. It's got its appeals.
I am envious of you, my friend. I am very, very envious. It sounds really cool. And the best thing about it is I think for really, really good writers, they need this kind of, this liminal space because, it seems like, if their mind is under a certain type of stress and if it's a personal stress or a vocational stress, then that can kind of suck away the bandwidth for creative endeavors is what it can do. I mean, I've seen it do stuff like that. So, I mean, it's probably a good thing. And like a lot of the great writers who I've interviewed on here, I mean, they will have worked, a bunch of different jobs or, I mean, they're good folks, they're doing good and they're, doing what they need to do to get by. But, but that kind of creativeness, I think it requires a lot out of us and out of something very deeply. So.
Oh, I totally agree. I've worked many jobs in my life as well, which have given me varying amounts of free time. But a writer will always find time to write, usually at the cost of something else like sleep or a social life, but they'll always find time for it if they can. I really feel for writers who have jobs that they dislike, because I've had jobs that I dislike and it absolutely burned any creativity that I had. By the end of the day, I just had nothing left to put down on paper. It was just, pure exhaustion. So there are many writers out there who have really tough jobs and still find the time to write great books. And I really take my hat off to them. I don't know how they do it.
The really like the terrible thing about having a crappy job that you don't like, which if my boss is watching, I love my job. I like my employer. I support them. But I have worked jobs in the past that I absolutely hated. And it's almost like you have to use your creativity to get through the day is what you have to do. And you have to kind of use it as a balm, this mental balm. It's almost like a form of self-therapy. So you can put up with a crummy work environment, a hostile work environment. And then whenever you go home, I mean, that, the little muse is like, oh man, I'm glad that's over. Wait, you want to write now? Wait, what? I mean, it's like, so it has a way of just being a soul sucking endeavor. If I was a creative person, I would much rather have a physically taxing job than like a psychological mindfuck job any day of the week. Because,
I think I've had jobs where I've worked in, like supermarkets and stuff, and like it's mindless physical labor in a warehouse somewhere. Perfect. Because then your mind can wander while you're working. You don't really need to pay attention to it too much.
Yeah, that's right.
You can get a lot of stuff done during that time. That's like found time. Even better if you work, like I'd worked night shift jobs and stuff before where you could just put your headphones in and go and do your thing and no one would bother you. And that's excellent as well. Then you can catch up on, you can get audio books or podcasts. You can be doing something with your head in the meantime. And then you can come home and you've not exhausted all your creative energy.
When I was talking to B.L. Blankenship, he mentioned to me that some of his best writing, it's almost like a second stage of writing where it's whenever he's driving, whenever he's doing like a minimal task or something, and his
Washing
brain is working on it.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And like, and if you have a job though, that just kind of steps into that space, it's so hard, I mean, it can be really, really difficult to do. But, all the writers I've spoken to, they have told me the exact same thing. They've said, Frank, if you have a job it's better to have a lower paying job that's physically taxing than the opposite. So I can certainly see that. So I have to ask, are you an outliner? Are you a right by the seat of your pants? Or are you I'm going to outline a couple scenes in advance? Or, how are these stories structured? Yeah.
So the Interloper trilogy was structured as if it was one book in 3 parts, because I had never written a trilogy before and I didn't really know how to. I knew that the middle part was going to be really difficult. The middle of a trilogy is where stories tend to sag and slow down and get bogged down. Luckily, I've received a lot of feedback about the second book recently that has been incredible to hear. So I'm confident it doesn't sag in the middle, but I had to plan it out so I started with the ending, really. Like, I had to figure out, here's what I've got in mind for the story. Here's where I want it to end. Here's the catharsis and the experience that I want to deliver at the end of it. How do we get there? And then once I had the overarching story, I was like, cool, right, now where's the 3 books in this? And then I had to find where the stories stopped and started. The initial story arc of Icebreaker, the midline that the 100th question draws through everything, and then the big finale that everything builds up to and Under the Oak. And then, because I'd never written a trilogy before, I just wrote it like one big book so that it would all make sense the whole way through. So there's not much in the way of time skips or anything. I think like Icebreaker takes place over like a week. So I charted down like what happened day to day in Icebreaker. That was fine. And then once you got into the bigger parts of the rest of the story, I started finding that other stories were appearing out of the blue in it. I was, oh, we should detour and do this and we should do that. So it was a bit like gardening, really. It was it's like deciding what to trim, what offshoots to let grow, and at the end of it, I had something approximating a story, and it took a long time. Once I started writing it, I would have another idea. I'd be like, oh, this is a great idea, but I need to change everything across 3 books to put it in. So it was a lot of going back and editing things so that the future books would make sense. But otherwise, I wrote them to plan. Like, I planned it out, and then once I had the plan, I found that I was pantsing a lot of it anyway. So I think a good mixture between the two is essential for any good writer. You need to learn how to plan, but you also need to learn how to just be there in the moment and make it up as you go. And a lot of the time, that's some of the best stuff that you'll write.
And so from this morning, I think you sent out a tweet, and this tweet was some writing advice for some aspiring authors. Yeah. And I think that if a quarter of the writers out there, if they put in just half of this advice, I think it would greatly improve their writing. Would you like to talk about that and how you came to these conclusions? And
so I don't know if you saw the big thing that I done on Twitter a while back, where like I don't do many things that blow up on Twitter. I am not social media savvy, but I had about 300 self-published books on my to be read list, and I went through them live. Didn't mention any names. Unless I really liked, so I'd read the first chapter of all of them, and I would do it live, and I would say either, I'm not going to keep reading this, and here's why, anonymously, or here's the name of the book, and I've tagged the writer, and this is fantastic, I'll put this on my TBR, I'll read it later. Something like 90% of the books got cut that way, so I went from about 300 to about 30. And that's what I'm currently working my way through, and they've all broadly been fantastic so far. Varying degrees of like editing quality and stuff, but the actual stories themselves have been fantastic. So the writing advice that I put up today was based off what I keep seeing authors miss, what I think they could, like a lot of self-published writers especially, could probably do with hearing. It's the same things that an editor would tell you, would tell you, which is to, cut your word count, say more with less. You don't need to go into details. A lot of what you write is just meaningless rambling. If it doesn't advance the story, if it doesn't advance the scene, if it doesn't develop character, it doesn't develop action, it should probably be on the cutting room floor. So it's really just, there's lots more to editing than that, obviously. but it's like the best advice that I've heard from editors condensed down into like 3 or 4 tweets.
I love that. Oh man, I love the background of where this advice came from. It came from this experiment that you set up, and you're actually in the trenches. You're reading these other authors' works, yeah. And you were able to make these deductions. And, I find that so fascinating and cool. And, especially the descriptors, I think that's something where a lot of writers will kind of lose me. And as a reader, reader fatigue is a real thing. And if the writing isn't elegant, it can almost become a bit of a math problem, where like you're just kind of going through line by line, and pretty soon you just kind of get tired of reading. I mean, you know,
to the end.
I mean, I'll be invested in the story, but there's just some kind of like cognitive thing that's going on, and I'm like, well, but I mean, really good writing. And this is what I really appreciate in your novel is like, it's a pleasure to read every single line. And, and earlier this week, I sat my wife down. Well, I guess it's Tuesday, isn't it? Man, I am losing track of the days. Oh my gosh.
Same.
Yeah, I know. It seems, it seems like we're further along in the week, in the week, but I was reading out chapter 1 to my wife out loud. And just listening to it out loud, I was like, holy crap. I was like, the prose in here is great. I mean, it's so tight. It's so, it's a very efficient prose to it. And, it was almost like I was hearing, an entirely different story. And so on that note, is there an audiobook version of this floating around out there?
No, there's not. A lot of people have asked me that, to the point where I think I'm going to develop one. I'm lucky enough to have family who are like audiobook involved, one of whom's like a voice actor, so I might just contact him and see if he's game for it. Otherwise, like I'd have to make a bunch of decisions, I guess, about like who I would want to read it, how I'd want it to be done.
Oh yeah,
I could almost imagine it. Like, it's a different format, so I don't know as much about audio stuff as I do about. I can write a really good novel. I don't know how to read a very good novel, so I wouldn't just do it myself. Yeah, I don't think that I'd get it right. But getting someone who knows what they're doing to format it into audiobook, I guess, would be really cool. And it would definitely, I think there's a lot of people would quite like to read it as I've got a lot of friends who don't read books, who just want it in audiobook format so they can listen to it. And it would probably, interesting that you say about reading out loud, because during the editing process, I think a lot of writers now, and they should take this advice as well, it's great advice, will read their work out loud to see how it sounds. And that's how I think good prose can be read out loud, and you can appreciate it like someone's telling you the story. So that's
Katie
cool.
Berry. Oh yeah, Katie Berry, who I had on about 2 weeks ago, and she was telling me about how she wrote her series Claw, the Canadian thriller, and she would actually use the text to speech whenever she was trying to listen to her stories back at her, and she said, "Oh man, I don't need this sentence," and she would go back and that was a really powerful quality of the Claw series, is that it's just really, really easy to read. It wouldn't fatigue me. It wouldn't make me, want to put the book down. I mean, just kind of, and plus, there's almost like a mental massage to a good book.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what prose can do to us. I mean, it makes my head feel nice. And it's like, wow, I feel lighter now.
Are you a visualizer, Frank? Like, do you visualize it in your head when you read?
I am a big visualizer. I certainly am.
Yeah.
I'm very, very detailed visualizer. I'll read a scene a couple of times before I kind of, I move on. So yeah.
Get clear in your head what's happening in it, and yeah.
Oh yeah. And as for a narrator for your tales, I don't know if you've ever listened to Soren Narnia's Knife Point Horror, but that's an audio book. Oh yeah, really, 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 really good stuff. And he's a minimalist writer. Everything is from first person mainly. But the way he narrates and the way he will enunciate his words, his speech, his patterns, I mean, if I tried to read his stories out loud, you wouldn't have the same effect. So whenever you said that you had some big decisions to make, finding a narrator, is probably going to be the biggest one. And like the voice, the voice can kind of, it can supplement the voice that I have in my head, and it leaves me with just the visualization process of it, which is really super cool.
Yeah, I would also have to decide if a man or a woman would read it, and there's part of me wants like an old dusty style guy to read it, or would it be cooler if like someone with like May's voice, you know, like the ship's AI?
Yeah. Oh man, that would be an eerie effect too, wouldn't it? That would be an eerie effect. You could even add like a little frame story as like a treat for the audiobook. Like, hey, you know what? This is you know, these are some tracks that survived, and this is May, and she's going to tell this story. You know, it's like a little frame to it. It's like an extra gimme.
Cool, man.
That's pretty cool, man. But yeah. Oh man, I find that so fascinating, dude. That is so cool. Well, so can you tell me about your editing and your rewrite process? So I assume that you sit down and you write a first draft, and then what? What do you do with that first draft?
I write a first draft, then I read it. Okay. I print it out usually and read it out in like a big folder or something. I go through it with a red pen, and I'll try and catch things. I'm not a great editor for grammar and spelling and stuff, but I'm pretty good at catching just stuff that could be cut. So I'll go through it and be generous and let as much of it survive as I think can. And usually I'll develop the story a little bit again. Like a lot of the editing work in the first draft is connecting things that should be connected and maybe aren't. Perhaps you've got a character or you've got two characters who could just be one character. You've got people explaining things that have already been explained. You've got people saying obvious things in dialogue or things that they wouldn't say out loud. You know, little things that you catch like that when you're reading a story critically that anyone else would have written. So I go through and I remove it, I kind of sharpen it up a little bit, and I get the broad story strokes down solid. Then I go through it again and I do like a close writing, like a close reading of it. And like you were saying earlier, like in a good book where every line is a joy, I'll go through it line by line. And I'll be like, right, this sentence, do I need it? Do I really need it at all? No, cut it. Or it can be said much more elegantly. You usually turn 3 sentences into 1 sentence, turn 2 paragraphs into 1. Sharpen up the action scenes so that everything flows. Make sure that, like, read it fresh and make sure that visually everything makes sense and flows. I remember, like, someone caught in an early draft of Icebreaker that someone walked somewhere, then was on top of something, then was down again. And I went, oh yeah, I didn't even notice that when I was reading it. So little things like that. Continuity errors, I guess. And then once you've got that, you're in for like another 4 or 5 read-throughs where you just go through and just close read as closely as you can, I guess. What needs to be there, what doesn't need to be there. Once you get to that point, like the book that I'll be bringing out soon, The First Rule, I just done the final edits on that and took about 10,000 words out of it. Just took a machete to it, just
10,000 words out of it. Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah, right. That's about 10% of the total word count. It's down to about 100,000 words now. I think like 97,000 or something. And it's so much sharper for it. It's so much better for it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, well, it's almost like you're building a house, and then you go in there and you're moving out all the equipment that you were using to build it, and you're painting and you're moving a wall around and you're remodeling the main structure of it. It sounds pretty good. Well, so have you ever tried your hand at poetry?
No, I have not. Well, unless you count when I was very, very young. I know a lot of really great poets. I've got a friend that I play D&D with who's an excellent poet. He's published and things. I've got friends on Twitter who are excellent poets. Some of them are self-published, some of them are published. I have never been very good at poetry. I don't have the thing for it. I don't know what it is. I can appreciate good poetry. I love poetry. I'm just not very good at writing it. I think I'm maybe too literal for it. I appreciate really good like lyrics as well and stuff.
Oh
like
yeah,
form,
for sure.
Like the old classics, like the Odyssey and stuff. Like poetry is this massive field. There's a lot of great poetry. You can't come from Scotland and not like poetry.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say oh yeah, and just me being a reader, but I think a good mark of an outstanding poet is someone who can really appreciate those quiet spaces. The wind between the branches of trees, the snow falling, the sound of it, And, the reason why I asked is that, in your novel, I noticed a lot of your descriptors are really strong on that. It isn't overdone, but, there's little sprinkles of it, especially from Bear's point of view. Like when he's looking at the crawler, when he was standing on top of it, when they were, raising the balloon and he saw like the sky for the real first time in it. And your descriptors in there, I thought, man, I wonder if he has like a box full of poetry somewhere that's kind of floating around. He's writing about, the wilderness of Scotland, I guess, or the wildness.
Well, I'm no good at poetry, but I think, especially in the way that Bear sees things, there's a lot of, so I've got a lot of friends who are visual artists. Like I know guys who are tattoo artists and stuff, architects, graphic designers, guys who are really amazing painters and stuff. There's a lot of talent in the people that I hang out with in the visual arts. And I have absolutely no skill in the visual arts whatsoever, but I can write a good novel. But I'll talk to them all the time about what our creative endeavors have in common, and things like juxtaposition, where if you want a line to stand out, you put it next to a line of the opposite color or of an opposing shade or whatever. Contrast, juxtaposition, foreground, background. There are things that come into descriptive writing that are basically just techniques we've stolen from cinematography and visual art. So when you use things like negative space, you talk about what's not there instead of what is there. It creates that weird inverse, what would you call it, a photo negative thing that artists do sometimes, where they just they kind of talk around it. And especially when you're dealing with something like cosmic horror, where again you don't want to describe it because then that gives it away too much. So you want to ease that out for as long as you can, let it be unknown for as long as you can. So talking around it, talking about what it isn't instead of what it is, I think it's just a good way of achieving that, the same way an artist would use that technique.
It is a powerful technique in Interloper. I mean, it's almost like you're describing the footprint of the dinosaur, but we haven't seen the dinosaur yet, and the effects of the phenomenon. And I mean, it's really, really cool. And like the build up, the runes on the messenger. So I'm at the part where the crawler made its way to Anchor White, I think is the name of the city.
Oh yeah, White Anchor, yeah.
White Anchor, yeah. And the city is, well, I don't want to add any kind of spoilers to our listeners. You know what? We're gonna have to have the hashtag spoiler alert episode where I go through everything and we kind of sit down and we do that. I think is what we're gonna have to do.
Once you've read all three, we'll do like a full spoilers episode, right? We can talk about
awesome. That's it. Yep. And cool. I will have plenty of warnings up, all kind of stuff for us on that. But that's pretty cool.
Suffice to say, some stuff goes down at White Anchor. Yeah, some things.
A lot of stuff. Yeah. Oh man, there's so much stuff that I want to ask you, but I'm like, you know what? I really want to continue enjoying it. So yeah, it's pretty good. Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, Messenger's a fantastically fun character to write. I love Messenger, without giving away anything about why. But Messenger's literally just in my head, my friend Rig, who looks just like Messenger and is covered in tattoos.
He's your friend. I love it.
Just my mate who doesn't read books, but he recently picked up Icebreaker because he was in it and read it and was like, "Oh yeah, it's me."
That's a great way to market a book too. Tell your friends that hey, you're in it. I base this character off of you. What a wonderful way. Yeah, I like that. Well, so how long have you been playing D&D?
Since I was about 19 and I'm 31, so that makes that 12 years? 11
about
years, 12
years. Okay.
Long time, man. DMing pretty much the whole time. I have been cursed as the forever DM. I kind of prefer DM. I like DMing.
Okay, cool. Yeah, love it. That's awesome. So, have you ever gotten into like video games, or has it always been like tabletop stuff, or?
I am a D&D for video games. Yeah, not so much anymore.
Cool. All right, awesome.
I have sadly adult responsibilities and stuff now.
I hear you on that. I have to second you on that, my man. Yeah.
Yeah, but man, I've put hundreds and hundreds of hours into things like Skyrim and Morrowind and Oblivion, big RPG games.
Oh yeah.
Planescape, the Icewind Dale games, Fallout 1 and 2, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 3. all those games. Yeah, I used to play all sorts of weird video games, especially really old, weird RPGs were a big thing for me. Arcanum, stuff like that. You know.
Oh yeah.
What's the other ones?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't even remember most of them. Arcanum was a big one. I loved Arcanum. I loved them for the same reason that I loved D&D, though. The developing of a character, the tracking of an adventure from nothing to something. I love all the stories that those games told. Story games were always my thing. RPGs, games with engaging narratives where you can make choices. Sucker for the Mass Effect games, things like that.
Oh yeah. Now, whenever I was coming up, me and my brother, we were always into the RTS games like Dungeon Keeper, Total Annihilation, StarCraft, all that
Command
stuff.
And Conquer.
That's right. Yeah. We used to play hours and hours, hundreds of hours of the stuff. And as a matter of fact, what I like to joke is that I never went to graduate school. I just have a bachelor's degree in history, but in part it was because of Command and Conquer. I just played it way too much, and what I should have put more time into my studies. But
it comes up all the time at pub quizzes, capitals of places or historical leaders, and I've played so much Civilization.
That is awesome! Oh my god, you go in there and crush it.
I can tell you the capital city of Ethiopia, no problem. I've played numerous games of Civilization.
I bet you're fun to sit down with a pint, at a pub or a bar or something. I bet you've got some really, really cool stories. I bet that's pretty awesome.
Man, it's been an interesting life,
Yeah, it has. Well, Steve, we are coming up on an hour, man. As a matter of fact, I think we have surpassed an hour. That's right. And
excellent. Feels like it's been half of that.
Oh yeah, easily that. Yeah, too. And whenever I make the edits and everything, I believe it's going to come up right underneath an hour, probably about 55 minutes. But it has been a blast, and I know that we were kind of passing ships in the night with my schedule. It was mainly me. Just trying to get everything straight. But is there anything you would like to leave our viewers with before we kind of close it out?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I should mention if I can plug something.
Feel free, plug away,
That's
my man.
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
So after I did the whole Twitter thread with the 300 books, I was contacted by my now friend Ryan, who's a businessman from down in London, and he was wanting to start a BookBox style subscription thing, but for self-published books. The problem being most self-published books are fairly terrible. So he messages me asking, "How on earth did you get through those books so quickly?" I explained my process, and he just said, "Right, we should be working together. Really, I could really use a guy like you." So we got together, and we've been looking through a lot of books, self-published books, all novellas, novels, full-length things, graphic novels and stuff, poetry. Looking to put things on the list. So we're looking to. We've got most of the books that we want to use for it now, for the first 6 months or so at least, or 3 months maybe. And we'll be launching that probably come about the end of December, start of January. We'll start taking subscriptions, and then we look to start shipping in February. It's called Your Paper Quest. You can find it at yourpaperquest.com. We're pretty excited to get that going. Okay. We've been building up to that for a while now.
And I would like for my viewers to know that me and Steve are going to talk offline, and he's going to give me a link to this, and that will be in the show notes as well with a descriptor. I think that is a wonderful idea. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we definitely need the cream of the crop to start rising up is what we need in that.
Well,
world.
We started off talking about curatorship, didn't we? And
that's right, we did. And then we're ending it. I think it is. I think you're right, sir. Well, Steve, thank you so much for yep. Well, thank you so much for stopping by Reader's Labyrinth, and I will be seeing you on again. I promise that.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's a threat
come
too.
Back on. This has been great fun.
Awesome.
That's a threat. Well, thanks for having me on, Frank. It's been a joy, man. Thank you.
Right. See you, man.